Now, polls open in South Carolina tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock Eastern. Miranda Kahn reports on this closing day of the primary campaign in the Palmetto State.
JD, the billionaire businessman turned presidential candidate may be on the verge of a huge win. According to a Real Clear Politics average of polls in the Palmetto State, Mr. Trump leads his closest competitor, Senator Ted Cruz, by 16 points. But a new poll just released today by NBC News and the Wall Street Journal shows Ted Cruz may be closing in on that lead. Take a look. Mr. Trump comes in at 28%, 5 percentage points ahead of Senator Cruz. But the real battle seems to be for third between two Floridians, Senator Marco Rubio, who comes in at 15%, and former Sunshine State Governor Jeb Bush, who has 13% within the poll's margin of error. Senator Rubio upset some people last night with his last-minute cancellation of a scheduled speech at the Conservative Review Conference. Radio host and Conservative Review editor Mark Levin had his own idea of why the surging senator was a no-show.
I said he must have been at a LULAC or La Raza meeting because it was really quite odd. But here's the bottom line. That shows enormous disrespect and a lack of class.
Yep.
And it concerns me a lot. I'll tell you what he was concerned about in my view. He had to speak to thousands of conservatives, and he didn't want to do it.
Rubio's team said his schedule was really jammed and tried to send a surrogate, but the conference organizers said no because they only allowed the candidates themselves to address the 6,000 or so people in attendance. Jeb Bush was on Morning Joe earlier today. He was asked if he thought he can beat Senator Rubio, and if not, whether or not this would be the end of the road for him.
I hope I am. That would be a heck of a victory, given the fact that he's basically been coronated in this political process all the way through. We're on the ballot in every state. My intention is to go forward, but I'm not focused on Sunday or Monday or Tuesday. I'm focused on Friday and Saturday right now.
And Jeb also said in that interview that, quote, the polls are irrelevant with so many voters undecided. So with the polling station set to open in less than 12 hours, we will see if Governor Bush's optimism is validated with the voters and will be enough to carry him past Senator Rubio and give him that much needed momentum he needs on the campaign trail. JD, back to you.
Thanks, Miranda. And it's worth noting that we will be talking to Governor Bush a little later in tonight's program. But for now, for more on this particular part of the political proceedings, let's call on our outstanding political panel. First, Skyping in from New York City, the former Lieutenant Governor of the great state of New York, Betsy McCaughey. And joining us from Newsmax New York, noted radio and television commentator and I guess a denizen of the left, we'd call him, Ellis Henican. Thanks to you both for your time here tonight on Newsmax Prime. Betsy, first to you, the latest NBC News Wall Street Journal poll notwithstanding, a whole lot of people on the ground in South Carolina say it's going to be a big Trump win. Do you see it that way?
Well, it probably will be. And if he leaves South Carolina with a big enough win, say more than 10 points over his next nearest competitor, he's likely to be considered the presumptive nominee.
Let me turn to you, Ellis. I know you have a little passing curiosity with what happens to Republicans. What is your take on what may transpire tomorrow night in the Palmetto State?
Deep obsessive fascination is more like it, JD.
Good.
It's been an amazing race. You got to say that. Listen, I believe that this is a year when we can't believe the polls. There's something broken about the polls, but they're not usually this wrong. So yeah, it seems likely that Trump's going to win. And the real interesting part is who's going to be number two. Is it going to be Ted Cruz? Is it going to be Marco Rubio? And then way out on the edge, I'm just starting to see some little glimmers of Kasich. I don't know if he can get up to those other guys, but it's worth watching.
Well, let's talk more about that in terms of what happens on down the ballot, so to speak, Betsy. It looks right now as if Trump and Ted Cruz are 1-2. Now Ellis correctly points out that Marco Rubio is trying to make a difference. But for the sake of argument and or observation, let's take a look. Among these other candidates, Jeb Bush, John Kasich, Marco Rubio, and Dr. Ben Carson. Betsy, who do you think will emerge from South Carolina with any type of momentum down the ballot?
Well, it could be Marco Rubio, although I think there's a great deal of exaggeration in the importance of Nikki Haley's endorsement. She has come out pretty strongly for allowing refugees, Muslim refugees, into the country right now, despite the danger of not being able to vet them. That's not going to help Marco Rubio because he's already suspect on the issue of immigration. I think the real sad story is Jeb Bush, who was for so long going to be considered the front runner. He's run out of money. He's operating on steam. And, you know, it's showtime or go home time for him. And it looks like he's going to just have to go home.
Well, we are going to talk to him before all of that happens, but let me turn to you, Ellis. In this situation, do you really think Bush has burned through all that money, or does he still have enough cash to do something after South Carolina? 20 seconds to you, Ellis.
Well, he's got a couple of shekels left, but it's more than that. His donors are looking for other places to land. The energy is out of the thing. I'm with Betsy. I'm starting to hear the first notes of taps playing in the background.
Well, we are not going to play taps on our discussion. We would ask you both to stay in place because we're going to bring you back after the break. At this juncture, something really important to remind you of, and that is Newsmax TV coverage of the vote in South Carolina tomorrow night. We will begin at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. John Bogman and the Newsmax Now crew. Then I'll come to the anchor desk at 7 tomorrow.
Passing a background check,
Pass the background check,
paying a penalty,
pay a fine,
paying taxes.
start paying taxes.
It won't be a quick process,
That is a long path,
but it will be a fair process.
but I do think it's fair.
Marco Rubio burned us once. He shouldn't get the chance to sell us out again.
Welcome back to Newsmax Prime. That ad from Senator Ted Cruz's campaign pointing out the rhetorical similarities between President Obama and Senator Marco Rubio when it comes to a discussion of a possible amnesty. Let's continue our conversation now. From New York City via Skype, we've got the former Lieutenant Governor of that great state of New York, Betsy McCaughey, and from Newsmax New York, our good friend, noted radio and television commentator Ellis Henican. Betsy, a pretty effective ad from Team Rubio, is it not? Or pardon me, Team Cruz, is it not?
It is, and Americans remember how Senator Rubio got bamboozled on that Gang of Eight immigration bill, which I read thoroughly and was shocked at how many dangerous provisions it had for lowering the standards of vetting refugees, for example. I always give people credit when they change their minds or learn more and become more sensible on an issue, and I hope that's true with Marco Rubio.
Now, Ellis, it's interesting. This doesn't occur in a vacuum. Senator Cruz and his forces have had their fingers snapped. Or I guess, taking the ruler and hitting your palm, metaphorically speaking, with a Photoshop. The Cruz crowd photoshopped a picture of Marco Rubio looking up to shake Barack Obama's hand, talking about the Rubio-Obama trade pact. I guess that was in a mailer. Some of these sharp elbows and questionable tactics, are they going to come back and haunt Ted Cruz, Ellis?
No, they could. Frankly, I thought it was kind of interesting to listen to Marco Rubio quote someone other than himself. All right, that was kind of fun. But listen, it's part of a bigger issue that Republicans have, though, right? You guys are pushing further and further and further to the right on this thing. You're giving up the middle. All that is acceptable in this campaign is the harshest, most hostile anti-immigration rhetoric. And you know what? It appeals to the people who are the intense base members, but it's driving the whole middle part of American politics away from the party. I don't think it's a very good strategy, but you guys
go ahead,
seem committed
Betsy.
to it. I'll admit that.
Well, Betsy, go ahead.
To work. They're being told their jobs are being moved to Mexico. They don't want to have to compete for work with immigrants, especially illegal immigrants.
And the other thing
ahead.
is this. Now, hang on, Ellis, because this is the standard evaluation we get from the dominant media culture and our well-meaning friends on the left like you, that somehow common sense expressions of concern about law and order for the border and for American jobs are, quote, extreme. Tell me exactly, Ellis, how are these sentiments extreme? Educate us.
Let's take these candidates one at a time. I mean, Ted Cruz wants to evict 11.5 million people who are here working, the vast majority of them legally, providing for their families.
Now you've skewed it right there, saying that 11.5 million are here
11
working.
million people. 11 million people, evicting them, that's pretty extreme. I think even you'd agree
wait a
that's
minute. Now,
pretty
you
extreme,
just said
don't
something
you?
earlier. You said they are here illegally. Seems to me it's far more extreme to ignore enforcing the law. Betsy, what's your take?
You're going to evict them?
Amen.
You guys want to
the
evict
fact
them?
is, I don't know where America decided that it was okay to break some laws and not others. I don't believe we should tolerate illegal immigration. And look what's happened in Europe.
Well, let me ask you this in terms of both of history and applying it. Ellis, how do you consider Dwight Eisenhower? Do you think of him as a rash conservative Republican, or do you think of him as a moderate, modern Republican?
By the standards of today, he's just about a leftist, I think.
Well,
right?
then you're aware
guys.
of the fact that it was no less a president than the mild-mannered, moderate Dwight David Eisenhower who forcibly returned millions of Mexicans who had come into this nation illegally. So you see, the argument about being extreme doesn't hold water against the panorama of history, no matter your effort, Ellis, to change the perception.
It's extreme to tolerate widespread illegality.
I will call your Eisenhower and show you Ronald Reagan, who I think agrees more with me on this than either of you guys. Do you notice that?
Now, here's the thing, and again, you're giving us incomplete history. When it comes to the Simpson-Mazzoli Act of 1986, the dreaded amnesty, there were enforcement components in that legislation. Sadly, 18 months after it was signed, there was a new president, and this is part and parcel of the problems that the Bush political family is having today, because both Presidents Bush 41 and 43 did not follow through with the enforcement provisions of the Simpson-Mazzoli Act of 1986. Is that about right, Betsy?
That's true. And the fact is that Americans are sick and tired of being told they have to obey the law. They get a ticket if they park in the wrong place. They're punished if they don't pay their taxes. But millions of people are allowed in here to break the law and take advantage of our generosity, and it's got to stop.
Last word, though, to one of our guys on the left, Ellis Henican. 30 seconds. Go ahead, Ellis.
Go make that argument, guys, to the fastest growing segment of American voters, Latinos, and convince them for the next 6 generations to vote the way that African Americans have been voting for the last couple. You know what? It's really dangerous politics. Very dangerous politics.
And it's even more dangerous to play fast and loose like the governor of California has done, basically getting rules or requirements for citizenship to have people vote there in that state. But we'll have to end it right here. Ellis Henican at Newsmax, New York, and Betsy McCaughey from New York City Skyping in. We appreciate what you both had to say. Now, much was said right here. What do you agree with? I'd love to get your comments. Send them to me at newsmaxtv.com/comments. Back with more after this.